grew up in a wonderful music time where we had songs like Candy Girl and Crush Groove and a bunch of other things. But there's this one song that I remember, and I don't know if you remember it, please tell me. It was called Jealous Girl. And the lyrics were, fellas, there's a jealous girl in our town. Right? I think it was ABC that might have sang the song. And that song reminds me of what we're going to talk about today. Have you ever worked for someone who deep in your heart you knew they were jealous of you? Like literally jealous of you. No matter what you did or how well you would do things, that they couldn't be happy for you because they were too busy being jealous of you. I have heard so many stories from so many people at multiple levels who deal with this issue of jealousy, not being able to rise above, not being able to get to that next level because either their leader's a blocker or a hater or whatever the combination of things are. But jealousy is a real thing in the workforce, and it's something that we usually don't say for a myriad of different reasons. I think most people don't want to admit that it's an actual emotion that really does damage to people's careers. It's just that simple. Jealousy in the workforce does damage to people's careers. And more often than not, I can't think of a time where I've seen one leader call it out on another leader. And that's unfortunate because we know what happens. And that's why these conversations are so important, because much of what we're talking about is not conversations that people are openly having at an executive level. Say, you know what? You're jealous of her and that's why you're acting that way, and calling it out. That's why it's important for you to know what's happening, to know that you're not crazy. And so we're going to talk about jealousy today. We're going to talk about the root of it, like why it happens and what you can do to mitigate your exposure, right? Because people are going to be jealous. I can't take that away. But I can help you have a different perspective so that you know that you are not crazy, and that you know that you are worth every bit of whatever's coming to you, and that you know that if your leader can't handle it, that's fine, but you don't have to stop being you. I told you in a previous episode, I had a leader who told me that I needed to shrink myself. And what only made her right in her saying that was that she recognized that I wasn't in the right position for all of the things that I had the capacity to do. I was never going to shrink myself. So she should have said, hey, maybe this isn't the good fit because you have much bigger ideas or whatever, but that wasn't the conversation. My point is, you can survive a jealous boss. And so let's talk about it. When it comes to jealousy, more often than not, it's a combination of people's inability to control you or the situation. Perhaps it's an inability for the leader to not be able to control the network and influence you have, or they just haven't amassed the knowledge that you have. And so that's perceived as a threat. Jealousy is a threat response. People are jealous because they don't know how to navigate around what they see as a threat. And threats are a response to fear, and you can't control someone else's fear. Let me just put that out there. You can't control what someone else fears, but you can figure out how best to make sure you navigate someone who is either froggy or fragile or whatever you want to call it. So let me tell you a story. I had this one leader who gave me every important assignment that came across the desk, right? So he had his work, I had my work. And what was very interesting was his leader, who was a vice president at the time, also saw my value and would pull me into meetings and say, here, I want you to do this, and would assign me work. That made it extremely awkward. Let me be very clear, extremely awkward. And so you have to be politically savvy in these things And so for me, I made it a point to share, hey, I'm doing this for so and so. I want you to know because I have the work that you've given me and this other work that's been given to me too by your boss. So right there, we see that I've got two leaders, both at multiple levels, that value the work that we're giving, right? And I continued to get more and more work for this other leader. And it was, and again, this was my boss's boss. This is, she's pulling down, coming up. You're going to come here and do this other work. And it didn't make any of my other work suffer, right? And we got accolades and awards and lots of recognition for the benefit of the work we were doing. And it was beautiful. Until one day he came to the office and pulled me aside and said, hey, I want to talk to you. And I'm thinking, it's like, okay, cool, fine, whatever. And he proceeds to give me a performance improvement plan after I've gotten awards and recognition and a bunch of other stuff. And then proceeds to tell me in this performance improvement plan that I'm getting too big for my britches. I had a grown man tell me at work that I was getting too big for my britches. What do you do with that? What do you do when your leader's like, you know what? You're getting too big for your britches there, chickie. What? Who says that at work? But it honestly, it happened. It happened. I've got witnesses. I've got the receipts to prove it. And I can honestly tell you that was like, I think I've cried like 3 times at work, maybe 4. I cried. I literally was like, are you kidding me? Especially because I felt betrayed by this relationship, which I really respected. And after listening to the feedback and trying to determine what to do with it, I realized one key thing, that criticism only means something if you value the critic. See, a jealous leader, more often than not, in an attempt to control you, will try to make you feel bad about your work because you are getting visibility, you are getting perspective, people are pulling on you, you are a source and a resource that people want. More often than not, they will criticize you in a way to contain or control you. It's not dissimilar to micromanagement, but this wasn't a micromanaging relationship. We had a decent relationship. I was able to report information and get coaching at times, what have you. But in this performance conversation, after having gotten glowing reviews and bonuses and everything else, this man told me I was too big for my britches. And so I had to decide how to manage the fact that my manager was upset at the fact. As a matter of fact, oh no, I told this story wrong. This wasn't my manager. This was my manager's manager. So I had a manager. He was the manager up, and then the VP was one over that. So it was a whole layer of things happening. And so I had to really reconcile with the fact that this relationship that I had once trusted was no longer a relationship that was going to serve me. And I had to figure out in a very savvy way how best to manage around the fragility that was happening and figure out how to maintain my integrity with my work product and still serve, these 3 leaders that I was working with, but at the same time, stay out of his radar. It was difficult. It was really difficult. And for those situations, I would probably tell you that unless you get really good allies and really good partners and really good people who are around you and can vouch for you when you're not in the room, if you don't have that, it's probably time for you to pull the ripcord. This is one of those times where I'm telling you, you know what? You might want to parachute out because you cannot defend yourself in the power position. You have to have people, especially if the organization's large, you have to have people around who can fend for you when you're not there. That's why it's good to have allies. That's why it's good to have mentors. That's why it's good to have people at multiple levels and different functions and different places and different departments who know your worth, who know your value, who can speak into your life, even when you have people who are criticizing for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the organization, but for their own benefit. And so I'll tell you this. Part of what you need to remember is that when you're working in a situation when your boss sucks, you have to not get so lost in your now that you can't figure out your next. Don't get so lost in your now that you can't figure out your next. Because when you know your next, you can choose how to respond in the moment. I knew that my next role was going to be one of leadership, so I needed to figure out how to navigate around and getting out until I could. But I couldn't blow up the spot then because of this dissolving relationship. See, a lot of times we react because we want to be vindicated and justified. And sometimes justification comes in the validation somewhere else. And that's okay. Don't stay in places looking to be validated from people who don't want to validate you. It's just that simple. And don't seek acceptance from people who are consistently criticizing you. It's not a well that's going to ever give it up. It's not. And so this is a hard message. I think sometimes we try to stay places to try to prove ourselves. I am certain that I have done that more often than not. So if you can learn from me, figure out who your positive critics are, people who you allow to challenge you, who can help challenge you from a place of growth and not from a place of jealousy, but people who really want you to succeed and can coach you to success, because that's going to be your best bet and you can hear more clearly, and they can also know that you're investing in a path that's far beyond your now. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We talked about a lot, but I promise you, if you join our community or check out our webpage, you'll learn more. Join us on Facebook so that you can also hear from others like you, people who have had jealous bosses or manipulative bosses or micromanagers or scapegoats or any of the like. Join our community, subscribe this page, but also check out our website, yourbosssucks.com. yourbosssucks.com. Why? Because you'll have access to all the episodes and future episodes, and also tips and tricks that you may not get on this podcast. We hope you've enjoyed today, and be well. And remember, don't let your boss suck the life out of you.